The US and Ukraine say they've agreed to work on an updated and refined version of a peace plan worked out by Russia and Washington. Following talks in Geneva on Sunday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said more work is still needed. European leaders have rallied behind Ukraine, seeking a better deal for Kyiv by creating their own peace plan. But as the talks continue, so do Russia's attacks on Ukrainian civilians.
An explosion shook this residential neighborhood in Chernihiv, northeast of Kyiv on Monday, after Russia launched drones. It comes after a separate attack on Kharkiv the night before killed several people and left more than a dozen wounded. While Russia and Ukraine continue to exchange daily drone fire, an updated peace framework is in the works, the topic of Sunday's negotiations between Ukraine, the US, and European partners in Geneva. They affirmed that any future agreement must fully uphold Ukraine's sovereignty and deliver a, quote, sustainable and just peace. Ukraine's top negotiator has hailed the talks as highly productive, and the U.S., too, is optimistic.
Meaningful, I would say, probably best meeting and day we've had so far in this entire process, going back to when we first came into office in January. But there's still some work left to do, and that's what our teams are going to be doing right now.
But the new draft still has to be signed off by the presidents in Kyiv and Washington first. Then comes the much more difficult task of getting the Kremlin on board. While some Ukrainians welcomed international engagement, others were skeptical, doubting that any agreement would hold.
I don't believe that there will be a lasting peace after these negotiations, because there is a side that cannot be trusted.
Well, there have been so many of these agreements, but no results. I don't believe in it. As peace negotiations continue, Ukraine has affirmed that it will stand by its red lines.
Well, earlier today, Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed the opening session of the Crimea Platform Parliamentary Summit in Sweden. Speaking via video link, the Ukrainian president urged leaders not to stay silent, but to defend key principles of peace in Europe.
And it is crucial to support the principles on which Europe stands, that borders cannot be changed by force, that war criminals must not escape justice, and that the aggressor must pay fully for the war he started.
Let's get more on this from our correspondents Rosie Birchard in Brussels and Mariel Müller in Kyiv. Welcome both. Let's start with you, Mariel, and we'll start on Ukraine's red lines. Just outline what they are and whether they've changed at all.
Yes, so one of the most important red lines for the Ukrainians is that the eastern Donbas region cannot be formally recognized as Russian territory. That is very important for the Ukrainians, and it hasn't changed because Volodymyr Zelenskyy said that President Vladimir Putin is basically seeking legal recognition for something that he has stolen. And that the general sense here is that if Putin feels like he can get away with changing borders by force, he will come back for more. He will feel emboldened in the future to do this again. And another important red line for the Ukrainians is that they cannot accept any limitation to its military, as it was suggested in the initial draft of this plan. They also want to keep the door open for a EU and NATO membership in the future as part of their security guarantees. And also very important for the Ukrainians is the release of all prisoners of war and the return of Ukrainian children that they claim Russia has abducted since the beginning of this war.
OK, so Rosie Birchard in Brussels, you responded to this plan cooked up between US and Russian negotiators by coming up with its own. How do the two compare?
Well, I've been speaking to ministers and diplomats gathered here in Brussels, and they've got differing views on just how concrete this sort of counter-proposal is. But you can be sure that the Europeans want to see a deal which caters to very real EU fears that, as Mariel alluded to, if Russia were to get a deal which were to make Vladimir Putin feel emboldened, that he could come back for more and that he might look beyond Ukraine's borders and into the European Union, particularly Baltic states are concerned about that. So what they would like to see in an eventual peace deal is to start with a ceasefire before negotiating any sort of territorial concessions or which kind of territory might eventually be exchanged. That's something of key importance for the Europeans. They also would like to see a very clear US commitment to a security guarantee. And then there's this question of what to do with hundreds of billions of US dollars worth of Russian central bank assets, which are frozen here in the European Union. The Europeans want to make sure that is a card which remains in their hands. They have been having all sorts of legal debates over exactly how to try and turn those assets into a reparations loan for Ukraine. It's a key piece of leverage for possible future peace talks, and they will want to make sure it remains with them, with the European side, when it comes to decisions on what to do with them.
OK, so Mariel, in Kyiv, is there any sense that the current negotiations over a plan could result in anything more substantial than previous efforts?
Yeah, it will really depend on the US security guarantees or security guarantees in general for Kyiv, because this is what it all depends on for Ukrainians, if they can trust any agreement, if the security guarantees will be legally binding, if they will be robust enough. So this really remains to be seen. What are the details of this? And also, I mean, Zelenskyy, as you played the clip beforehand, he on the one hand he says they are eager, they are sending positive signals, they are eager to work constructively on these proposals together with the Americans. But on the other hand, he's also very clear in saying that war criminals cannot escape justice and that the aggressor needs to pay fully for the war that he started.
And Rosie, where are the Europeans on this latest set of plans going backwards and forwards? Do they see these as a realistic basis to end this war?
Look, they are way more optimistic than they were a few days ago, when it seemed like once again there was another stop on this kind of Trump diplomatic roller coaster, that Europe seemed to be blindsided. There were fears once again that the US could be kind of cutting a deal behind Europe's back. Now I think the ministers I've been speaking to do feel that Europe has a bit more of a voice in this, and they are also really keen to stress they are being constructive here. They're not trying to stand in the way of these peace talks, but you can tell that they are also keen to keep the United States on board, while Europe has stepped up and provided a lot more military assistance with this very unpredictable US administration. You can see they're very, very keen to make sure that Washington stays on board, and it shows just how beholden in some ways the Europeans really still are there. And of course there's that much bigger question whether they can be optimistic of whether Russia would ever sign up to this. Certainly ministers I've spoken to here seem to have no sense that Moscow is ready to make any sort of concessions. And actually one diplomat I spoke to said he thinks that Russia and Vladimir Putin may be simply watching from the Kremlin and smirking as the Europeans scramble really to show that they are willing to step up and work with the United States on a possible future peace, which of course at the moment, as the battle rages on, still seems very far off.
OK, thanks for that, Rosie. DW correspondents, Rosie Birchard in Brussels, Mariel Müller in Kyiv. Thank you both.
And to talk about red lines and other things, Marko Mihkelson is here with me in the studio. He's the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Estonian Parliament. Welcome to DW. Let me start by quoting you. You've said that President Trump's original 28-point plan looks more like a surrender plan for Ukraine. Do you still think it's worth using it as a starting point, though?
I think that obviously we all are interested that this war, this devastating war, is going to be finished in Europe, in Ukraine. But it has to end with a just and a lasting peace. And in in that initial proposal, obviously, we didn't see much that could really refer to the will to have a just and a lasting peace in Europe. And this is why we have to address the current situation with frankness. And I hope that these negotiations, as we have seen in Geneva, will lead to the lines which really make it possible.
So which parts of any peace plan for Ukraine is non-negotiable?
I think territorial integrity, sovereignty of the nation, because what we have seen so far, Russian side, they have not changed their strategic goals. They would like to destroy sovereignty of Ukraine. And also to destroy European security architecture.
And that means no seizing of territories?
No seizing of territories, obviously, and the question of the free hand for Ukraine to decide about their future alliances and also how big their army could be and so. But to be honest, I don't see yet on a battleground preconditions for serious peace because, in March, Ukraine offered unconditional ceasefire to Russia. And what we have seen ever since, unfortunately, the battles are intensified.
Now, if we're looking at the issues like the territory that we've just discussed, the future size of the Ukrainian army, NATO membership, Europe and the US seem very much apart, don't they?
You know, one of Russia's aims are to divide us, both within Europe, but also Europeans and Americans. This has been their long-term strategy, and this is where we stand very firm today, that we have to keep alliance strongly together, and we all are interested that the peace we negotiate here, first and foremost, right now, the position of Ukraine and its partners and allies should based on that basic principles, that we don't sell out sovereignty, that Ukraine is not alone, Ukraine is supported by all our partners and allies. And most importantly, we cannot accept, we should not accept that aggression going to be rewarded in one and another way, because that is not definitely end the war in Europe.
You said that Putin's main aim is to divide Europe and the US and to divide NATO. Do you get the feeling that the White House sees it in the same way?
I don't know, because I don't have this information, but I am very hopeful that efforts made right now in Geneva, but also through different diplomatic channels, will keep us close on the same page. Yes, because we can agree on something, but if that will not lead to a just and lasting peace, we will create the conditions for a widening of hostilities or war, not only in Ukraine, perhaps also we could see a direct military conflict between NATO and Russia, if we don't take it very seriously right now.
So you're essentially saying that if this peace plan is not coming into effect under different conditions, we are also facing another war with Russia.
Russia is carrying out shadow war against the West already. We have seen numerous sabotage acts, hybrid warfare is going on, interference into our political realities and so on and so forth, because their aim is to destroy European security architecture, divide us, Europeans, Americans, as I said. And this is why we have to very strongly commit to united position of NATO allies, Western allies right now, both understanding what is at stake and also supporting Ukraine and working in the name of a just and lasting peace in Europe.
Thank you very much. Marko Mihkelson, there, Chairman of the Estonian Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio today.